In 1939, Hitler traveled in a steel fortress, an armored train bristling with anti-aircraft guns, secret communications, and enough steel to withstand a bombing. It was not just transport. This was his war headquarters on rails. After his suicide, the SS destroyed his private carriage to keep it from the Allies. Yet most of the train survived and found a new, unexpected life. What happened to the rest, and who claimed it next, turns everything you think you know about Nazi Germany's spoils upside down. The order for Hitler's armored train went out in 1937, at a time when Nazi Germany was preparing for war on a scale the world had never seen. Krauss Maffei, one of Germany's leading locomotive builders, received the contract to create a rolling stronghold that could serve as both a command center and a sanctuary. Over 2 years, engineers and craftsmen worked in near-total secrecy, piecing together what would become the most infamous train in modern history. By August 1939, the train was ready, measuring up to 430 meters in length, weighing more than 1,200 tons, and consisting of anywhere from 10 to 16 cars, depending on the mission. The original name, Amerika, reflected Hitler's fascination with distant power, but after the United States entered the war, the train was quietly renamed Brandenburg. Inside, the contrast between luxury and military necessity was striking. Hitler's personal carriage featured a private bedroom with polished wood paneling, a marble-clad bathroom, and a salon for meetings with generals and ministers. There were dining cars with white linen tables, kitchens staffed for banquets, and quarters for his personal staff and bodyguards. But the heart of the Führersonderzug was its technology and security. A dedicated communications car held a 700-watt shortwave radio, teleprinters, and Enigma cipher machines, allowing Hitler to issue orders to the front lines in real time. For defense, the train carried 2 Flakwagen, flat cars equipped with quadruple 20mm flak-Vierling cannons, each capable of firing 800 rounds per minute. Luftwaffe gunners from the Regiment General Goering manned these guns, ready to repel any Allied air attack. The train's armor plating shielded it from small arms fire and shrapnel, while reinforced undercarriages helped absorb the shock of nearby explosions. No detail was left to chance. Before each journey, security teams swept the tracks for explosives and cleared the entire rail route, so no other trains could run while the Führersonderzug was in motion. After every trip, all operational documents were destroyed to erase any trace of its movements. Even the location of the train's overnight stops was a closely guarded secret, with decoy trains sometimes dispatched to mislead enemy intelligence. In every sense, this was a fortress on rails, built to protect not just a leader, but the regime's nerve center itself. September 1939. As German armies surged across the Polish border, Hitler's armored train rolled into Silesia, becoming the nerve center for the invasion. Parked on a sealed siding near Oppeln, the Führersonderzug bristled with security. Luftwaffe gunners manned anti-aircraft cannons on the flak cars. Railway police and SS bodyguards patrolled the embankments, while engineers checked every rail for sabotage. No other train moved on the line without approval from Berlin. Inside, Hitler and his generals pored over maps, relaying orders by encrypted radio. For weeks, the train served as a rolling headquarters, its location changing every few days to avoid detection. By late September, the campaign was over, and the train returned to Berlin, its mission complete. The following year, the train crossed into occupied France. In October 1940, it pulled into a quiet siding at Montoire-sur-le-Loire. Here, Hitler met Marshal Pétain to negotiate the infamous handshake that would seal Franco-German collaboration. French security cleared the tracks for miles around. German guards swept the area for explosives and watched the skies for enemy aircraft. The train's dining car became the stage for tense talks, while the communications car kept Berlin updated on every development. The entire operation unfolded under the constant threat of sabotage or air attack, but the armored train and its entourage remained untouched. August 1941 brought a new kind of danger. As the Eastern Front raged, Hitler's train and Mussolini's were shunted deep into reinforced tunnels near Rastenburg in occupied Poland. Both leaders conducted strategy meetings in the eerie silence of the tunnels, guarded by hundreds of troops. The trains were sealed inside, protected from Allied bombers by tons of concrete and steel. Outside, guards maintained around-the-clock watch, while inside, the command staff worked by the glow of blackout lamps. For those few days, the entire German and Italian war effort ran from the heart of a forest, hidden beneath a mountain of rock. Throughout the early war, the Sonderzug shuttled between Berlin, Berchtesgaden, and the front lines, always protected by elaborate security. For Hitler, the train was more than transport. It was a shield, a command post, and a symbol of power on rails. On January 16, 1945, Hitler boarded his armored train for the last time, leaving his Adlerhorst headquarters behind. The journey east toward Berlin was quiet, the countryside frozen, the war already lost in the west. The train's staff, seasoned by years of secrecy, followed their routines, security checks, coded messages, and the destruction of every itinerary. But for the men aboard, the sense of finality was impossible to ignore. By the time the train reached Berlin, the city was under constant air raid, and the Red Army was closing in. Hitler would never ride his steel fortress again. As the Third Reich collapsed, Hitler gave a final order to his longtime aide, Julius Schaub. In late April, Schaub was summoned to the bunker and instructed to travel to Austria and ensure the complete destruction of the Sonderzug. The goal was clear: deny the Allies any chance to capture the train's secrets or turn it into a trophy. Schaub, who had served Hitler since the earliest days of the Nazi movement, carried the order south. His arrival in Austria came as Germany itself was dissolving. In the chaos, the command chain blurred. Schaub passed the order to an SS detachment stationed near the mountain rail lines. On May 7, 1945, just as Germany's unconditional surrender was being signed in Reims, SS set explosives beneath Hitler's personal carriage near the town of Malnitz. Flames consumed the luxury compartments, wood paneling, marble, and the remnants of a vanished regime. The destruction was thorough, but it stopped there. Whether from confusion, haste, or a lack of explosives, the rest of the train remained intact. Photographs from the Bundesarchiv show the charred wreckage of the Führerwagen, but the armored Flakwagen, dining cars, and communications wagons survived, abandoned on the rails. Rumors would later claim the entire train was obliterated in a single fiery blast. The reality was far less dramatic. Most of the steel fortress, over a dozen cars, remained untouched. Within days, Allied troops advanced into Austria and found the remnants waiting. The myth of total destruction would linger, but the evidence lay in plain sight. Hitler's armored train, minus its most personal carriage, was still there for the taking. British and American engineers arrived to find the armored train, minus its destroyed centerpiece, still largely intact on the rails. Within weeks, the Allies inventoried the surviving carriages, stripping away the more conspicuous symbols of the Nazi regime. Anti-aircraft guns were removed, armor plating was cut back, and the cars were repainted in drab Allied livery. US Signal Corps photos from late 1945 show soldiers lounging in the former dining car, the opulence of Hitler's mobile headquarters now serving as a backdrop for occupation duty. Maintenance logs from the period record break upgrades and generator swaps, as the cars were pressed into service for military transport and administrative travel across the shattered German rail network. By the early 1950s, with the formation of West Germany, the surviving carriages were quietly returned to the Deutsche Bundesbahn. Facing a severe shortage of rolling stock, the new government had little choice but to put these robust, well-built cars back on the rail. Chancellor Konrad Adenauer's staff selected several for his own use, converting the interiors into modern offices and salons. Adenauer traveled across the country in a train that, only a decade earlier, had carried Hitler and his inner circle. Photographs from the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung archives show the Chancellor greeting officials on the platform, the carriages now bearing the insignia of a democratic republic. Railway workers tasked with the conversions described the process in practical terms. According to oral histories preserved by the DB Museum, most saw the cars as valuable assets, not relics of a disgraced regime. Armor was removed, communications equipment replaced, and the interiors refitted for civilian comfort. By the 1960s and the 1970s, the cars were gradually separated and assigned to regular passenger service or storage. Some remained in use as late as 1990. Today, a handful survive in museums, where curators frame them not as trophies, but as artifacts of a turbulent century, evidence of how even the most notorious symbols can be stripped of power and absorbed into the fabric of everyday life. Iron and power change hands, but history's scars remain. Today, Parts of Hitler's train sit in democratic museums, once symbols of tyranny, now reminders of how regimes fall and nations rebuild. What we choose to preserve says as much about us as what we destroy. Share your thoughts below.